Hello, everybody, and welcome to AAC Connection. This is our program. This program is promoted by AAC Brazil section. Once a month, we invite an international executive or expert or authority or a very nice cost engineering practitioner to talk about career, to talk about best practices. And it's an honor and a pleasure to have this month our dear Ana Maria Popesco, who is an engineer admired by everybody I know. And Ana Maria, welcome to ACE Connection.
Thank,
And it's a pleasure to have you here with us.
thank you. Boa tarde, everybody.
Good.
Thank you, Felipe.
Boa tarde.
Boa tarde. Very similar to Romanian, so I love the Brazilian language.
Ana Maria, it's our idea to have you share with our audience interesting passages of your career, your advices to us, and how hard it is to be an admired forensic expert, delay analysis expert as you are. But I will invite our international director, Felipe Gutierrez, to take over and to conduct the interview with you.
Thank you, Aldo. It's a pleasure.
All right. Thank you very much, Aldo. Again, thank you very much, Ana Maria, for taking the time and sharing your little bit of your busy schedule with us, and for being part of this program that, as Aldo said, it's new, but it's being very well received by the audience, and in terms of format, if the audience that haven't seen this before, this is a program where we have a conversation more often than not with, as Aldo mentioned, experts in the market. Then Aldo was listing, you can talk to experts or to people who are recognized or to people doing this. In all the cases we had to date, and you're included, we were lucky enough to have people who fulfill all the requirements. So it's been a super pleasure being part of this. It's really good to have you today here with us. So thank you very much. So as Aldo said, today we're going to be talking about a little bit the profession of the construction expert, what there is good, what there is not so good, in terms of what's happening around the world, really. I think what happens here in the US and in some of the international arena is relevant to the people who are listening to us now. But for most people in Brazil, for instance, it's a little different. So it would be very nice to listen to, from you, what you're seeing, what your experience is, your perspective is, and hopefully that helps us as a community to improve our understanding of what's happening, what's going on, etc. So if you don't mind, Ana Maria, I guess the first question of this, again, conversation, so please interrupt me at any time, is if you want to just give us, give the audience a little bit about your background, and then tell us how you ended up being, a delay expert, which is something that in some places, like in some markets like the US, is very common. In some other places, like in Latin America, generally, you don't really find as many experts who are focused, really dedicated to that. It'll be interesting to see how that played out for you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Felipe, and thank you, everyone. I'm honored to be on this this panel and this discussion. I'm a lifelong member of AACI. I will say I have a little unusual situation. My father was a professor of construction management. We immigrated from Romania when I was about 2 to Austin, Texas, where he taught at the University of Texas at Austin. Being the only, let's say, only child of an Eastern immigrant father, you kind of are told you need to support yourself and it has to be something that will make you money, and you're not going to depend on a man. So, so it had to be engineering, I mean, period. But actually, I'm probably, and I could probably say this honest, I'm probably the youngest scheduler in the world, because the first time I scheduled, I used Primavera DOS. I was 12 years old. I had to do a math report, and it was creating a CPM schedule for planning out a high school dance. And my father taught me CPM theory, and he taught me Primavera DOS. And I still have my little report from my little PERT chart that I did to plan and execute a high school dance. And after that, I really thought it was fascinating that you can structure anything into a logical, precise movement and understand when things would finish. And I thought that was just amazing. And so it kind of got in my blood when I was young. I graduated, went to the University of Texas, of course, and got my civil engineering degree, my master's in civil engineering and linear scheduling. And then I left to go work as a scheduler for the city of Austin. And then I went into Houston, where I specialized in oil and gas projects. While I was doing that, I was working on my PhD. And because I love scheduling, and I found there was a forensic side of scheduling, I specialized my doctorate in forensic scheduling analysis, which was kind of the first of its kind in 96 to 98, 1996 to 98. So I'm dating myself a bit now, but it became very useful to me later on. And hence, I did something my father always said I should do: never stagnate. Don't stay in a job description for too long. And so even though I was a scheduler at first, I rotated in big oil and gas and pipeline projects as a contracts manager, a project engineer, an assistant project manager, a risk manager, just so I could understand everything that was going on in the world of managing projects. At the end, I worked for a little known company called Enron. If people remember Enron, I was the project manager there for pipelines. Moved to Denver to set up their telecom broadband trading platform, which obviously everyone remembers 2000, went nowhere and collapsed with Enron. So I had a serious, in 2001, I was in Denver and I loved the mountains. So I enjoyed not having humidity from Texas, but I had to make a decision. Okay, I'm obviously not going to be doing active projects. And my father said, well, now you have a PhD, you have your PE in engineering, go teach. So I naively went to the University of Colorado at Boulder and told them, I'm ready to teach. You could tenure me, happy to do it. And they gave me a look and said, oh, we don't do that anymore. We'll pay you $3,000 a course. And I kind of stared at them like they're crazy. I'm like, your tuition's $40,000 a year and you're going to pay a professor that has a PhD? So I called my dad in tears and I said, I can't teach. I won't make any money. And they're not going to tenure me like they used to tenure professors. So what am I going to do with my PhD in forensic delay analysis, right? So it was a very eye-opening, kind of devastating moment in my life where I had to change careers, change paths. And so I called a good attorney friend of mine that was a construction lawyer. And I said, should I get a law degree in construction law? I mean, I liked it. I loved construction law. I thought it was fascinating. He said, no, there's tons of construction attorneys, tons. But there's not many people that have a PhD in forensic delay analysis. And I said, well, great. What do I do with it? He goes, there's claims consultants. That's what they do. I'm like, really? You can make a career out of my doctorate? He's like, yeah, with your background. And so interesting enough, and a segue into AACEI, a lot of the people on my doctoral I guess, let's see, I did a Delphi panel on my doctorate, and a lot of the experts from the delay world I interviewed, they called me around the same time. They called me and said, hey, ACE is trying to put together this recommended practice. Have you heard of it? We don't know what it's going to be. It's for forensic delay analysis, but your doctorate is exactly the starting point for this thing. I mean, it discusses all the pros and cons of all the techniques. Can you be on our committee? So in 2001, I joined the committee with ACE on the dispute resolution committee. And we developed 29 R03 over the course of 8-9 years. And now it's on third revision. So I was honored to be part of it. It kickstarted my career in delay analysis, met amazing delay experts all over the world and in the US. And that really started my career. I've now been doing delay expertise testimony internationally, as well as proactive advisory work for clients to keep them out of claims if they listen, since 2002. So I've been, doing this for quite a while now. I've testified all over the world, lived in Australia for a couple years, worked for various claims consulting firms. I've been with BRG, Berkeley Research Group, now about 6 years as a managing director in Denver, but in the international arbitration construction practice. So it's been a wonderful journey, and really, I have to give kudos to ACEI because it really got me pointed in the right direction of my career.
Awesome. Fascinating story, Ana Maria. Thank you very much for sharing your experience with us. I'm sure it's going to help some of the people who are listening to us to get inspired. It really is an inspiring story. Okay, so we do have a number of questions, so we'll just go through them and we'll see how things develop from there. So one of the matters that always come to discussion, I guess, and to help the audience understand a little better as well what it takes for somebody to be a good delay expert or a good construction expert more broadly, is whether or not and what kind of exposure to construction, to the site, would someone need to have in order to become a good expert? If you can share with us a little bit about that.
Sure. And I think that's one of the problems I'm seeing today in the construction claims community, consultants. A lot of them come straight out of college and are recruited by firms like myself, FTI, HKA, directly out of college. And I think that's wrong. I'm not saying you have to spend your life doing on the ground, be for 30 years construction manager, but to have credibility and to understand the problems you're dealing with when you look at documentation, you should spend, I would say, 3-4 years minimum rotating in positions. You don't have to be a project manager. You don't have to be but you should rotate. And there's a lot of good firms, contractors and owners. I think you should work for a contractor. Owner can sit back and you just read reports. Contractor, you have to do it. You have to get out there and write the change orders and present your claims and estimate and understand when someone says 5 cubic yards of concrete in a claim. Do you understand that the size of that? Is that big? Is that small? Is that, you won't have that comprehension, and later on in life, it'll be too late. You can't go now. To go back at 40 and say, oh, I need to go get some construction experience, but I need you to pay me what I'm making now. No one's going to hire you. You need to do it and sacrifice and rotate, I would say, among different types of projects and different places in the world and for different contractors, for a few years. I might have done it for 8-9 years total. It's not a lot, but now when I testify, yeah, it's been a long time since I've boots on the ground, wrote a change order. But I could say, hand on my heart, yes, I understand what that means. And yes, I've done that. And that gives you so much credibility and confidence. And you're not just relying on documents. And I think that's kind of the problem with consultants now. A lot of them come in straight without even advisory experience, working for an owner or anything. It's just straight into claims and memorizing what their superior is telling them is the right way to do a claim. And I think that that is going to hurt your credibility later on when you are ready to testify.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. So there's always, I mean, it comes down to, I guess, really understanding, right? I mean, what's happening when you're looking into a claim. You want to be an expert on whatever analysis you've done. I think it's interesting. There's always this, people will say, well, you don't need to get sick to become a good doctor, but you need to see it from close, right? You need to be around it.
Right.
So being at site will help you for sure, at least in some capacity.
Yeah, for sure. And understanding the hardships. I mean, a lot of our delay claims or productivity loss claims, you're working on a power plant and they're talking about trade stacking. If you've never been on a power plant in the middle of summer in Colombia and seen these poor workers working in 100 degrees, of course they're going to have productivity problems. Like, of course, if you throw 100 change orders at them, they're going to. And when I hear other experts going, oh, those change orders didn't do anything, we paid you for them. I'm like, are you an idiot? Like, are you telling me you made 100 change orders in a very tight quarters and it did nothing? Like, how can you, look at yourself with credibility without understanding and seeing that for yourself? And I still think, even as a claims expert, unfortunately, because of COVID, I always ask to go to the project site, regardless of what stage it's in. I want to see it, understand the volume of it, the intensity of it, everything, that these impressions you get, regardless of the. And I think every good expert must say to the owner, I need to see the project. I need to understand it. I need to walk the site. I need to talk to people. And I still ask to do that. Unfortunately, the past 2 years, I could not, or a year and a half, but that's very important as well.
Yeah. And that takes us to another discussion we can have at some other point, which is the use of technology, right? So lots of site visits are being done with the help of drones and very cool stuff. And it's very helpful for sure, is in my opinion, but it's not the same. Okay, so some more, there's some questions coming through, and we're gonna get back into our kind of a plan in a moment, but some questions more technical, I guess. People want to hear from you, what kind of issues you get when you're analyzing a schedule, if you see often, incomplete scope or lack of updates, or both, or a schedule that is put together in the beginning of the project and then never really used to actually manage it. You're going to share some of that with us.
Yeah, well, obviously I still have a job and I'm extremely busy on claims because of it, unfortunately. Interesting you brought up technology. You would expect the quality of schedules, the quality of documentation, the quality of causation documentation, backing up your delay claim would be better, but it's not. I mean, maybe it's because the projects I see, and could be that jaded statistic, because the only projects I see are ones that are going bad. My claims that I work on are not rarely less than 20 million US dollars or more, billions or hundreds of millions. So maybe the truth is the good technology users and stuff don't get into claims, and I just don't get to see those. But it's so important that people honestly take project controls very seriously and not use it as check the box. That's what the contract says I have to do. Because at the end of the day, when you're defending any kind of claim, the tribunal is going to ask you, what was the schedule being used monthly? And if I said, oh, it was a bad schedule. This critical path was wrong. So we can't look at that. A, I get crucified as an expert because I'm now making something up that I wasn't there. B, I all the time use contractor schedules against them. They're like, oh, but that was a bad schedule. I'm like, well, that's your schedule. It's your critical path. If it was wrong, why didn't you correct it? Oh, it didn't matter. Well, it matters now after the fact, doesn't it? I mean, that's the key. And I always tell my clients in the advisory capacity, when I go help them mitigate risk, pretend today, we're at the beginning of the project, you know, at the end of this 2 years, which is going to drag to 3 years, you will go to an arbitration or a litigation. You will be in one. And the first thing they say is, oh, Anna Maria, you're so mean-spirited. You're so litigious. You're trying to make us fight like attorneys. And I say, no, if you know what you need to do to defend an arbitration claim correctly, and you properly document and you properly use the project control systems that you have implemented correctly, you won't go. The irony is there. You will not go into a claim. But if you assume you won't go into one and you do sloppy documentation, you don't record your actual man hours, you don't take site photos, your daily reports don't record anything, any issues. I'm dealing with a claim right now that the daily reports only 4 times said there was a problem. And this contractor is asking for $500,000. I'm like, well, if this was such a big problem, why is it only recorded 4 times in your daily reports? I mean, they're going to lose that change order. I mean, nowhere does it show it's a big problem. So if it was, maybe it was, but at the end of the day, it's the documentation that wins. I mean, in an arbitration, it's the doc. It doesn't matter what you think or who was unfair. It's the documentation. So it's so important. Not only implementing good project controls, using them to actually manage the project, not just a recording tool or a pretty report. Too many times owners ask for these huge reports that are useless. The project controls team wastes half their day updating the reports and not actually proactively managing the project. And that's a travesty that needs to be corrected.
Yeah, I think it really comes down to how much importance you give, either as a contractor or owner, to project controls.
Correct.
That's what it comes down to. Because if you just do it for, like you're saying, just for doing it, just to say you have it, you're not actually managing your project, may it be cost or schedule, scope for that matter, you're gonna have, chances are you're gonna get in trouble. And if you do, then it's even worse.
Right.
And that's why we end up having so many people with so much work in this arena, because it's not being managed well. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Too often.
And the contracts are only used when the project field personnel are in trouble, and that's another problem. I was a contracts manager. You don't have to be a lawyer to understand it. All of you, everyone, and I'm sure on this call, are extremely intelligent. Contracts can be read and you need to adhere to them. There is no, oh, I thought that notice provision was kind of, well, we weren't using it, so no. It has to be adhered to. And I keep saying that, read the freaking contract and follow it. You know, as the project manager, make sure your team understands the critical provisions of the contract that are critical to their job. Maybe they don't have to know all the contract and the exhibits but they need to know the critical provisions. What constitutes a disruption claim? What are they allowed to claim for weather? What are they allowed to claim for actual costs? I mean, you have to know that going in, because then you make a claim and it gets denied because weather may be a non-excusable delay, depends on the contract. Things like that I'm shockingly surprised every time I do a claim that everyone just acts like this contract provision was there for fun, and now the owner is holding him to it. and it's just kind of surprises me that there's not enough proactive, let's say, risk management, like contract review sessions with the project team to make them understand these are the implications of these clauses. We must do them, or we will not get reimbursed. We signed up to this. We signed this contract. And that's a big problem I see.
Yeah, I see that. I think we see too often as well that the contracts are, you get the lawyers writing the terms, right? The terms and
Right.
conditions, and then the engineers writing the appendices and the annexes, and nobody's putting it together.
Yeah, no,
they're not talking the same language, and then nobody reads them as they build whatever they're building.
Exactly. The definitions don't match, the rates don't match, and some things could be so simply avoided. So many gray areas in a claim that they're arguing over rates. If it was in the contract, the gray area would be gone. Like, it's so many of our contract claims have to do with gray areas. And I, as an expert, have to say, well, and that's where it comes back to being on the field going, look, it's reasonable for them to try to recover standby costs. It's reasonable. In my experience, it's reasonable. There's no term in the contract, but it's reasonable. So in that gray area, the tribunal has to decide, is that legitimate? And me as the expert have to be objective and help them understand that it is reasonable or it's not reasonable, depending on what it is. And that's key. You have to stay objective and honest with yourself and your client about what's reasonable, or you as an expert will be crucified on the stand for losing that objectivity. You're not an advocate. An expert is not an advocate. We're not attorneys. And I think American experts forget that. I do. I think international arbitration, it's very clear that you're not an advocate. But we tend to lose focus of that by our clients, unfortunately.
We're gonna come back to that point in a moment. Just a moment. Have just one more question. I guess it's more the technical aspects of what we are discussing. So there's some interest as well on, have you seen as an expert or as a scheduling expert that a client, maybe a contractor or an owner, hires an expert to review and validate a schedule because of a risk assessment before the project starts? And in the cases that you have seen, if you did, as you're nodding, how valuable was it for the project?
I've seen, unfortunately, Felipe, I've seen that less and less. At the beginning of my career and as a claims consultant, I spent a lot of time doing those validations. I was involved in actually helping the team develop the schedule. We do integrated schedule development sessions. I audited the schedules every 3 months for them to double check that they're following the procedures. The scope was, and over my career, it's gotten to be less and less, to the point of it's like, I think everyone is
I don't know if it's Ana Maria's or my internet. Aldo, can you hear us? Can you hear me? Aldo, you're on mute. Aldo, you are on mute. I can hear you. I think Ana Maria, we lost connection with Ana Maria. Aldo, can you hear us? Is it me?
Já vamos aceitar. Ela deve estar tentando se conectar. Yes. Ana Maria deve estar tentando se conectar aqui. Nós já vamos.
Beleza. Acho que tem um delay também. Ela comentou que, I'll just say it in English, because we might have listeners from other parts. Ana Maria did mention she was struggling a little bit with the internet at her place. Yeah, no, something happened, so apparently her unit is rebooting, so she's gonna come back in 3 minutes. I think we can, when she comes back, Aldo, we can touch base on another important matter, which is diversity in that profession. We don't seem to be I don't meet as many ladies as delay experts, and not as construction experts, to be honest. So not even only delay, but also in cost or anything else that's construction related. That'll be interesting to see what she has to say about it.
Yeah, let's ask her why there are so few women in this delay analysis area. And she pointed out something that's very important, is the quality of schedule, Felipe. Oh, she's back. I will admit her. Let's see, where is Ana Maria? She's back.
So sorry.
There she is.
Do you hear me?
Yeah.
I told you it always happens, like at least once a day. I apologize. Being in the mountains up here, it's spotty. So I apologize.
No problem. I think we are all used to having those hiccups every now and then, all over the world, really. So, we were trying, I think, so when you left, we started having a quick chat about, the gender diversity in the industry. I'd like to hear a little bit about that from you, in your experience. We know, I know some ladies who are delay experts and construction experts as a whole, in different aspects of it, but not that many. Mm-hmm. And that's even less frequent, I guess, in Latin America, in my experience. Perhaps you want to share something about that? It's improving, I think, which is good, but it's still terrible rates.
Yeah, I think construction, and I don't, I always worked well in a male-dominated industry. I think construction is just one of those areas that women don't, I see more in chemical engineering, mechanical engineering, but going into construction management, just, they're not pushed into it. If your father didn't do it, why would I go into construction management? It's just, part of it is just, it doesn't seem like something a woman would do. And you have to be kind of a tomboy, I think. You have to like to be in jeans and sweat outside in the hot heat. And it's, sometimes it's not the best. You have to wear a hard hat. There are things about it that I can understand why, it's just not a lot. And then you have to deal with a lot of men. For the most part, I think it's fine. I think have I had problems with a few? Sure. But I've had problems with women too. So I don't feel it's because men aren't allowing women in the field. It's just something they don't think about doing. It's not broadcast in high school. It's not discussed as a career. Women tend to feel, and I did too, we're not very good at math. So we don't want to go into engineering or construction management or stuff. And we tend to feel intimidated by it. And so I wasn't the best at math. I wasn't the best student my bachelor's year. I couldn't do structural engineering to save my life. I couldn't see what a moment looked like, no matter how much my father would pull his hair out. Why can't you see the deflection on the beam? I'm like, I can't see it. I'm going to fail this exam. But the thing that my dad taught me that I think everyone should understand is it's not about how smart you are. It's all guys getting 4.0s and they stayed schedulers the rest of their lives. It's about perseverance and accepting, okay, I'm not going to get a straight A through civil engineering, but I loved construction management. Once I got into the master's program, which unfortunately unless you go into a construction management program, which like at CSU or so forth, you have to do your bachelor's in engineering. That means you have to suffer a little bit to get through the hard stuff that maybe you're not the best at. That's okay. I took differential equations at a community college. I mean, I did fine in it, but I wasn't going to, you have to admit to your weaknesses. You don't have to be perfect at everything. And it doesn't mean you're not smart. And I think women get intimidated by that. Men are sharper. I remember tutoring fraternity guys that were partying all night, barely studied. I tutor them and they did better than me on the exams. Just angered me all the time. But at the end, it didn't matter. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Like, I'm doing what I love. I'm in a great career. I feel I'm successful. And women just have to understand that where it goes and to accept. I hear a lot of young girls, young women in college are like, oh, but I hate that course. Oh, I hate that course. I said, ladies, I hated every course in civil engineering. I mean, you don't stop because you don't like a course, because what you do in college means nothing to what you do as your career. You have to just get through it. You have to suffer. And I remember my dad once telling me, and he was right, I wanted to be a marine biologist. I loved animals. That's what I wanted to do. And he said, okay, do you want to have fun for 3 years in college and suffer the rest of your life? Or do you want to suffer for the next 3 years and the rest of your 50-year career, you can go dive wherever you want in the world. You'll have the money you could do. So decide, do you want to suffer now or do you want to suffer later? And I think maybe part of the younger generation that I'm seeing is a little bit of, I don't want to sacrifice now for something later. And sometimes engineering, construction management programs, not getting married right away, maybe waiting, those sacrifices you have to decide, like, are you going to make them? And I think it's important. I think women should do it. And I think I think as experts and talking to men, like on the construction site, and I think that's the other thing with this gender diversity thing. I'm not much for women, rights and feminists. I'm certainly not a feminist. I do believe women are just as smart, but there's things we do better than men, and there's things men do better than us.
Many.
Right? Many.
I actually think women do more things better than men.
And we're different than you. And I think we need to embrace that instead of saying, no, we're the same. No, we're not. And I'm glad we're not. Men call me all the time in construction meetings because I would help them negotiate something better, and that's great. They recognize it wasn't because they just wanted me in the room because I was a woman. They knew I can make everyone listen. You should embrace that and not be defensive that, oh, they want me in there. And if they give you a compliment, ladies, accept it. Like, I still expect compliments from men. I'm old fashioned. I expect men to hold the door for me. Does that mean I'm weak and I can't do it? Hell no. There's some chips on the shoulders that I think have been taught to younger women that we need to let go and accept. I've dealt with horrible women. I've dealt with horrible men. My biggest mentors that supported me were men, not women. In fact, sadly, I see women at my age, at my career, like Felipe said, there's not many of us. And I'm not saying all of them, but most are like, the attitude is, I'm not going to help a younger woman. I had to get here myself. I had to do this. I'm not going to help a woman. And, you know, that needs to be let go. And the defensiveness and the insecurity. Women my age and my level, very few, in my opinion, want to work together, unfortunately. And it is because what we had to do to get here. No one helped us. We had to sacrifice. And then they feel threatened. I mean, experts, when you get to our level, think about it. Our career is about confrontation with other experts. It's not about collaboration. And I think women don't do well. I think they do better against a man than another woman, because I feel, and this is just my impression, I could be wrong, women put a personal piece in that confrontation when it's against another woman. If they mean to or
I'll
not,
tell
is
you,
there.
that happens with men too.
Yeah, maybe so, but you, I think we get more, we have a lot of heart in it. And I'm not saying men don't, but there is things you have to be very careful of. Not, especially as an expert, you can't take things personally. When someone destroys my report, when I have to rebut, when an expert rebuts my report, A, I'm a woman, B, I'm Romanian. So my emotions run very high, heat, those two things. And they criticize my analysis, I take it personally. I get really mad, and I need to sit down and calm down and understand what they're saying. And, you know, and sometimes the experts criticize on purpose to get your emotions up. You have to stay professional, and it's a game. Part of it is a game, and you have to keep that personal piece out of it, especially if you're going to go into claims as an expert. That has to stay.
Yeah,
you could be mad, but go yell at your husband or your partner or your girlfriend, whatever, after the fact, you know.
that's a good advice. And so let me. So we had thought, you know, a number of questions, and I think people are still more. Well, they're very interested about knowing more of the technicality. So I'll keep asking those questions. Okay, if we need to do a second one at a later point, that'll be fine. My end. So there's somebody mentioning that in Brazil. And I'll say, well, I'll ask the question, then I'll just quickly mention what my perspective is, and then we want to listen from you, obviously. Listen, in Brazil, it is good practice that you present your claims to an owner as a contractor, even when you know it's a weak claim, or as it being named or mentioned. So they call it a weak claim. So you're probably not entitled to, because there is a market practice that you still get paid some of it, perhaps hopefully 30%.
Right.
I think that, you know, that in my experience, what I've seen is that doesn't happen as often anymore. It depends a lot on, you know, how prepared to defend the claim the owner is. So do you see stuff like that happening here as well in the US, past, present, and future?
I think in the past, I think South America, Latin America, Eastern Europe, you'd see they submit a ridiculous claim, assuming they'll get 50%, and everyone just knows it's going to be 50%. China, same thing. I think in America, and here now with COVID, with the economy, with everything, owners aren't just going to write a check. You know, they're just not going to do it anymore. They're going to expect that you have backup. I think it's going to go away in Brazil. I don't think you're just going to get, look at the, you know, the scandals you had with
Already
Petrobras.
changing in my experience, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, with Petrobras and the other contractors, you just start seeing people are becoming tired of just writing checks that may be frivolous claims. The economy can't support it. So I think that's why they're hiring. I've been hired now 3 or 4 times for owners and contractors, both now the past 2 years, to help them write a claim, write a change order. How do we get this passed? What do I need to do? Or an owner, can you evaluate this change order? Is it valid? What's missing? Can you talk to the contractor and see, is it legitimate? We don't want to be fooled. We don't want to look like suckers anymore. And I think that perception is going to continue because there's just not money there to spend. The profits on construction projects, I don't know how people go into the construction business as contractors, is slim as it is. One mistake, one omission from your scope, done. You've lost, even on the big projects. Oil and gas, same thing. Oil prices are low. People are trying to do renewables. They just don't have the money to write 100% overruns anymore.
And do you see, another question, do you see, so the question is about contract types. If you see more claims in contract types, I'm not 100% sure if it's referring to contracting strategies, as comparing EPC to unit price, or if it's comparing forms like FIDIC, NAC, JCT, and so on, or maybe the ones we use here in the US.
I think the forms themselves are irrelevant, and people need to realize all the FIDIC forms, AIA forms, all of those forms, at the end of the day, are forms. At the end of the day, and people forget, you can change them, and the people typically do. Yeah. When they finalize a contract, all you need to do is change one word. And sometimes it's very dangerous. Owners are used to using this FIDIC form with this contractor all the time. I'm like, well, that's great, but they changed 3 words in this project, which completely changes the meaning, and you forgot to check. So that doesn't mean, so I don't think it's the forms, but you're right. The type, is it, it's where do you shift the risk? Is it EPC? Is it time and material? We'll shift the risks. Is it lump sum? Are there multipliers? Are there unit rates for some and T&M for others? So I think that's more the difference where you'll get bigger claims. If you have a designer that's supposed to also be the construction manager, that can definitely throw a wrench in it. If the contractor is responsible for a lot and the owner very little, the claims are less. I mean, if the contractor is responsible for all the equipment, all the procurement, all the this, all the engineering, the owner can sit back and say, hey, the only thing they can argue about is the specs were bad, you know? And so depending on how much you shift on the scope wise on the contractor, the less room for claims, because, you know, what can he say?
Then they have to manage it.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't want to do that anymore. Do you see in your experience a gap or how much difference, I guess, do you see amongst professionals in schedules, or the quality of schedules in the US as opposed to Latin America or else where you have, you know, been working over the years?
I think it's the gap is growing. I think it depends on the contractor. You'll see some very sophisticated contractors. They work all over the world, and so their schedule quality is extremely high. They already have templates. They've built these types of projects many, many times. So it's not really the location anymore, because a lot of contractors are international. It's the size of the projects. So the smaller the project, the smaller the contractor, the less sophisticated the schedules are. Or they use, in Latin America, it drives me crazy, they use Microsoft Project. And not only is that a horrible software tool, sorry, in my opinion, I can't do a schedule analysis. I'm sure it's gotten better, but it's room for cheating, room for really overriding stuff. And at the end of the day, it doesn't need the rigor if the contractor is using Primavera. Now, I'm not saying just because they use Primavera, they make great schedules, but it shows a level of discipline. And so the smaller the contractors, because they use Microsoft Project, because it's cheaper in their perception. They don't want to pay for scheduling tools. All of that goes in, and it's more for the smaller contractors and the smaller project, because they don't want to put their profit margins are low. They don't want to put buy a $20,000 scheduling platform when, you know, at that point. So I think that's really the delineator on the quality of schedules you see is that. But I'm just surprised. I can't say the name of the contractor because I'm doing the claim now. I'm used to seeing him build 20,000 activity schedules on $500 million jobs, offshore jobs. The schedule on this project was 1,000 activities. And I'm like, did they bring their C team in? What happened? So I'm surprised. I'm like, you can't manage a $500 million job with 1,000 activities. Same contractor, very well known in the industry. People are putting their C teams on jobs. I was shocked. So there are exceptions. Unfortunately.
Yeah, that I think comes down to one of the very first things we discussed, right? Again, how much importance, meaning how much you want to invest in project controls, right?
Yeah.
Do it right, plan it.
Right.
Control your projects right. All right. Another question. It's more specific for the Brazilian experience, but I'll kind of ask you why. And I know the answer that, or part of the answer at least, that in the US, you know, use the AIA, but why Brazilian employers don't want to use or don't use the FIDIC contracts, which is, you know, very used across Europe mostly, I'd say.
Because I think a lot of in Brazil and other countries in South America, they are about relationship building, and they maybe have used an outside law firm, a small Brazilian law firm. Not that there's some extremely very good ones, but they've been using those specific law firms that are not international law firms for many, many years. They developed, you know, relationship with these lawyers. And the lawyers have worked with them on developing custom contracts. And to switch over after that point, when it's embedded, ingrained in all the projects they use, the lawyers that review it have developed these contracts probably for them from scratch. And they still use the same lawyers over many, many years. It doesn't make sense to them to switch over to a FIDIC contract or something else unless they switch law firms or the law firm is international, like, you know, that's over. And then the international law firm may say, hey guys, you really need to switch over to this form. This is much better. It has much more protection for you clause wise. So that's what I see on the few Brazilian projects I did work in arbitration on. They were very homegrown contracts.
Yeah, that will be the case, especially with large owners. They have their own, but then, which I guess in my experience, they feel like protects them because they're used to it, and then things they change. Mm-hmm. So even using their own form, they keep changing it. So
right.
So things happen. But anyways, yeah. Well, Ana Maria, we ended up changing the course of the interview that we had planned, which is fine. So that's the idea of this program. You know, have an opportunity to chat about things that matter to the industry and to the professionals involved in the AACE world, all over the world. So that again, that's fine. Thank you very much for this. Sure. We're getting closer to the end, so I just want to make sure we don't skip, you know, an important question.
Sure.
I do realize you did mention a little bit about it in the beginning, but if you want to tell the audience, you know, how much importance do you give to being a member of the AACE? How does that impact your career, of your colleagues, of your firm, of the industry, in your views?
I think it was the best decision of my life. The resources from AACE, all the way from the networking opportunities for young members to women to the different committees, which are very specialized. You get exposed to amazing experts, which I don't see in any other organization, any other professional organization that specializes in what we do. Recommended practices, the forums to ask questions if you don't know, the papers. Do you know how many times I've quoted, and our group at BRG have used the recommended practices in our expert reports and papers written? I just search on the AEC library. I need to find something on disruption on linear schedules on pipelines. Boom. I could find 3 papers written. I mean, literally there's, for your source of, and then presenting. I started presenting at AEC since I was 21. I probably have 40 papers written by now, and they got me out there to present. And I think I encourage everyone to do that. It's extremely, extremely important for your career. And I would say if you chose one organization, it would be this, but you have to get involved. You have to be involved. You can't just join it, and you have to use all the resources.
Yeah, and participate, right? I mean, it's a very open organization that allows people who want to help to be involved, to participate, to create knowledge and share knowledge and so on. So
correct.
That's really good. That's my opinion as well. Thank you very much.
Sure.
I see Aldo has rejoined us. I think it's time for us to get to a closing.
Felipe, I have a question for Ana Maria.
Sure, please go ahead.
Yes, I have a question here, Ana Maria. What advice would you give to a young practitioner of delay analysis or forensic analysis that intends to work internationally? What's the best thing to do? Is to try to work for an American company? Is to join a big consulting group? Is to join Chinese companies? Is to go to Eastern Europe? What advice would you give?
Well, I think after you've done the first step of working in the industry a few years, so that's the first step. Don't go into claims consulting as a delay expert right out of college, like I said. After that, and then you choose to join a consulting firm, I think you need to go find one that has international offices, that has respected experts that are willing to spend the time to mentor you, because you're not going to, you can't be working for some person that has an ego, that all they want to do is testify and have you do their grunt work for them. They have to be, so you have to interview, and it doesn't matter which firm, because I've worked for many of them. Some have great, all of them have good people. The problem is, are you working for that right person? I didn't. I had to move a couple of times because I wasn't working with the person that was willing to have me go to a conference with them, to present, to speak, to go testify. So you have to find a person that's willing to do that in any firm you choose. Are you working for that right person? I didn't. I had to move a couple of times because I wasn't.
Very good answer, and it's wow. It may inspire people to have a career just like your successful career. Well, Ana Maria, we have other questions here, but I think we are running out of time, and we don't want to bother you for hours here. And I would like, on behalf of the board of AAC Brazil section, to thank you very much and to invite you to come, hopefully in December this year, to give us another lecture in our annual meeting. And it will be very nice to have you here in Brazil again.
Thank you so much, Aldo and Felipe. It was an honor, and I would love to, and I would love to do this again. So thank you so much for having me.
And I'm sure I will see you again in person in future AAC events. Felipe, please, your final considerations, and we can call it the night.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you again. Thank you, Ana Maria. Thank you, Aldo, and the AAC section for allowing this to take place. It's always a super pleasure being part of this program. And I guess Ana Maria, Aldo already made the invitation, so we'll see you soon in Brazil, hopefully.
With a
by the end of the year.
caparina, with a caparina,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that'll be awesome. It was really good here listening to you
Thank you so much, all.
and learning.
Wonderful. Have a good evening. Boa tarde.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Boa noite.
Boa noite. There you go.